Hello everybody and welcome to your Tuesday Feng Shui stories. I have a very special story to share with you today. And I want to remind you that whenever I share a story with you, I do change some details to protect the privacy of the people who told me these stories or the stories I have witnessed, right? And so remember to stay with me till the end of the video so that you see how the story relates to Feng Shui and so that I can give you a tip, a little something that you can do to improve the Feng Shui of your home today, right? So this is a story of a woman who was a healer. When I met her, she was already a senior, she was retired, and she was doing healing as a profession, right? And so when she was young, she was born in a family where both her mom and her dad were just crazy about her, but their relationship didn't work out. So when she was about 8 years old, they separated and then they finally divorced. When she was 12 years old, her mom remarried to this very jovial guy. You know, he appeared to be very friendly and everybody liked him. And so they were married for about a month. And one night, she's 12 years old, right? She's sleeping and she wakes up and she feels somebody is trying to put a hand under the covers and molest her, right? And she realizes it's her stepdad. And so she kind of kicks her legs and she turns around and she acts like she's pretending that she's waking up, like she's still sleeping, but she might wake up, right? And so that deters her stepdad and he goes away. So she can't go back to sleep, right? She's doesn't know what's going on. She's 12 years old. So the next morning, she's at breakfast and then she leaves for school. And all day long in school, she's thinking, what am I going to do? So when she comes back and they're having dinner that night, she says, hey mom, it's her stepdad and her mom. So she says, hey mom, guess what a girl told me at recess today? It's a very shocking story, mom, I have to warn you. And the mom says, what did she tell you? And she relates the story of what happened to her with her stepdad as if it had happened to another person, right? And so she says, my friend told me that her stepdad did this. He went into her bedroom. And her mom says, that is really terrible. I hope that girl is safe. And so this lady, when she was 12 years old, she says, Mom, that had never happened to me. That had better not happen to me. Because if it happened to me, and she grabs a steak knife, she says, if that happened to me, I will go to sleep with a knife in my hand. And if that man tried to molest me, I would stick this knife right in his stomach. And she turns to look at his stepdad, and she just locks her eyes with his. Can you imagine that kind of power? I think when she told me this story, like my jaw completely dropped, because most of the time, you know, and I have shared with you, a lot of people share a lot of things that have happened to them when they were children with me, and most of the time, it doesn't go like that. Most of the time, children don't know how to stand up for themselves like she did. She was 12 years old and it was a potentially horrible situation for her. And she did not let it go farther. You know, her stepdad never tried again. He stayed away from her forever. And so I'm telling you this story because I think it's such a cool, empowering story of a young girl standing up for herself. But also, because many times, you know, when you have experienced things at home that you couldn't process, that your mind couldn't process, that you couldn't quite understand, anything that was traumatic, you may have gone into this state that is called fight, flight, or freeze, right? And so you are scared of something and you're in a state, your nervous system goes into a state where you cannot process what happened, and so you are like, am I going to fight? Am I going to run? Or am I just going to be paralyzed by fear, right? And so if you grew up in a home that wasn't functional, you know, I used to ask people when I did consultation many years ago, I would ask, was the home you grew up in functional when we do our initial interview before a consultation? And most people told me their homes were not functional. Most people said their homes were dysfunctional. I think in all my years, like in the first 10 years of consulting, only one person told me their home was dysfunctional. But then when you talk a little bit, that was functional. I'm sorry for that confusion. I mix up my words sometimes. And so when I started digging a little bit into what their childhood was like, people that grew up in really good homes were saying their homes were dysfunctional, right? Because the person, they only experience their own family, so you cannot really compare because you only experience what you lived. And so instead of asking people, was your family functional or dysfunctional, I started asking, so in the scale of 1 to 10, where 10 was a perfect TV family Brady Bunch kind of thing, and 1 was just terrible situation, the kind that they put in 60 Minutes, how dysfunctional was your family? And so that gave me a much more accurate responses from the people that I was helping through Feng Shui. And so most people have experienced some kind of dysfunctionality in their family. But if you grew up afraid, if you were abused in any way, if you were not nurtured, if you were not respected, if you grew up afraid, there are going to be things in your home that trigger that fear. Now, these same things, what I'm going to mention next, right, is that something that is really bad in any home, it's always bad. But if you grew up in a way that you felt threatened at your home when you were growing up, this is going to be really, really bad for you because it symbolically is connected, energetically it is connected to the way your brain and your nervous system works. So your brain connects through your spine to the nerves in your whole body. And so the thing that you need to watch out for is exposed cables. So many times I've been to homes of people where there used to be a chandelier in the ceiling and they took down the chandelier, but the cables are still there that used to connect the chandelier. Or sometimes they will have, they're working on some project in the garage and they took the faceplate off of the light switch and they never put it back in. And so wherever in your home you see exposed cables, that's going to be a trigger for fear. Our brain and our nervous system, they are symbolically connected to electricity and electrical cables because the way our brains work, the synapses, the way that the neurons, the brain cells connect to each other, it's kind of like electrical impulses. And so if you did not grow up with the kind of empowerment that this woman I was telling you about in the story before had, if you did not have the kind of love she had during her early childhood, that when something was about to happen at age 12, she was able to avert it by herself. If you didn't have that, if in any way you grew up in circumstances where you felt that you were not safe, then it's very important that you take control of this. So no exposed cables in your home. But even if you have the most beautiful home, exposed cables are still really, really bad Feng Shui. Fear in Feng Shui, fear is connected to the water element. So when the water element is working as it should, you show responsibility. Responsibility is the ability to respond to the things that happen, the ability to tackle problems, to solve things. When the water element is weak, you're going to be afraid. And when the water element is too hyper, you're going to feel guilty or be too bold, do risky things without thinking about the consequences, right? And so when you are well in the water element, you are responsible, you have the ability to respond. And when the water element is not working well, you're going to have fear, you're going to have guilt, or you're going to have being bold in a dangerous way, being reckless, right? And so in the home, make sure you don't have any exposed cables. And if you want to take it one step farther, make sure there are no cables in the floor. It's really bad Feng Shui to have cables on the floor. And so make sure all your cables are elevated. But exposed cables would be the symbolic connection in your home between the circumstance of not having felt safe when you were a young person and the way you approach life today. So a lot of people, they develop patterns because of the way they were raised. They develop patterns of going into fear or responding with fight, flight, or freeze, right? The paralysis where you actually don't know what to do. And when you are in this condition, when this part of your nervous system kicks in, your thinking part, your healing part, and your nurturing part of your brain, they stop working. When one part of your nervous system activates, it kind of shuts down the other. And so you have to watch out and make sure that there's nothing in your home that would make you feel afraid today. So exposed cables, whenever you see an exposed cable, you're going to unconsciously think about short circuits and about the problems that can come with short circuits. Somebody could get electrocuted, a fire could get started. And so every time you look at that exposed cable, a part of your brain that is instinctive and responds to danger is going to kick in. And whenever that kicks in, the parts of your brain that are supposed to be working on your healing and your reflection and your peaceful life are going to shut down. The maintenance of your home is super important. So in the 9 steps to Feng Shui system, which is the system I created to apply and learn Feng Shui, taking care of maintenance issues, that is part of step 7. So it's in the same step that also addresses decluttering and organizing the home, but also you have to maintain and fix the home. So I hope this Tuesday Feng Shui story is useful to you. So you let me know if you want to. Let me know in the comments, how did you grow up? Did you feel safe when you were growing up? Was there any circumstance in your early life, when you were growing up, maybe as a child or as a teenager, was there any circumstance that scared you a lot? And if you're brave enough to share here in our group, I will, if I see a connection, a symbolic connection between what happened to you, the kind of experience that you had to live through, and I will tell you what to watch out for in the Feng Shui of your home. Now, see you next week.